All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast, back to the show, and I'm happy to welcome back New York Times columnist and friend of the pod, David French. David, good to see you.
Matt, it's great to see you. Thanks for having me back.
So much to talk about, ranging from the horrific to the just plain weird. So in no particular order, let me just start with the Department of War. what, what what is this like? Is this like nothing, just like symbolism, or is this like indicative of a policy change?
It's nothing. Well, let me put it this way. You can't quite say it's nothing because they're actually spending a surprising amount of money changing all the logos. And I can guarantee you, because it was established as the Department of Defense by Congress, next Democratic president's going to move it back to Department of Defense just to make a point. I mean, so we're talking about millions of dollars being spent for performative nonsense. I mean, what is hoped to be gained by calling it the Department of War? It's not like the phrase defense is woke or weak in any way, shape, or form. It actually quite accurately describes the mission of the Department of Defense, which is national defense. After all, we have entered into a UN charter that bans aggressive war. So it is a defense force. That's what we do. We defend ourselves, we defend our allies, and national defense. So that is, it's just all performative. But, you know, Matt, one of the interesting things about Hegseth's leadership style is how much it leans on performance. I mean, this is a guy who's always being videoed, doing stuff for the troops, the push-ups, the PT, all of that stuff. And look, there are some soldiers who love that. They're like, oh, SecDef is in the mud with us. This is great. But a lot of others see through this. And another aspect of military culture is, yeah, there's a part of military culture. There are people in the military who are sort of performative with their military service. But most of the culture is not performative. It is not, you're not performing the role of soldier, you're a soldier. And watching all of that, I just don't know how that's going to wear with service members over the long term.
But even if we assume that this is more like symbolic or performative, what is the brand of Trump, right? Is it wasn't it supposed to be no more forever wars? And he did run against George W. Bush and Iraq. And so I'm getting mixed signals here. What is it? What is their policy actually?
I mean, we've had mixed signals from Trump from the beginning. I mean, he runs against George W. Bush, and then he promises that, like, the troops are so loyal to me, if I order them to, they'll commit war crime. Remember that little controversy from his first campaign? He's talked about ending wars, and he's talked about taking oil. I mean, whatever is kind of in his interest in the moment. And look, what he does is he gets to kind of have his cake and eat it too, because he has gathered under this GOP tent both hawks and isolationists, as you've seen, in the run up to the Iran bombing. These two wings of the GOP were at each other's throats in the days before the Iran bombing. Then Trump does it. And maybe those groups are still at each other's throats, but they're not at Trump's throat. Like nobody puts that much pressure on Trump. But yeah, he's always been a mess on this. He's always been with one side of his mouth, peace, out the other side of his mouth, I'm tough, war. That's just been sort of Trump from day one.
Yeah, I mean, he has gotten away with it, and I think there are a lot of just rank and file MAGA voters who, if Trump does it, it's good. But
yeah.
they
do just trust him.
They do. They trust him, right? That's it's simple as that. But I will say, I do see increasingly online, and maybe I'm just very online, but younger opinion leaders. And we did see people like Tucker Carlson come out against Trump during the Iran thing, and then they sort of pull back and get in line. But I have the sense that as Trump goes on and becomes more of a lame duck, and as other people, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, maybe even Tucker, begin jockeying for position, that like there are people on the right who actually believe the America First mantra.
Yeah,
They are not not only are they not neocons, but they're not Reaganites either. And so I think, doesn't this come to a head at some point? And I wouldn't be surprised if they throw Trump under the bus retroactively the way Trump threw Bush under the bus retroactively.
Oh, oh, I think you're going to see Trump thrown under the bus retroactively. Whether I'm skeptical is, will you see him thrown under the bus while he's in office? And that's where I'm skeptical. It's really interesting to me, Matt, because the Iran issue and the Epstein issue both have something in common, although they're very, very, very different, is they divide MAGA. So
Mm-hmm.
you see MAGA at war with itself over the Iran strike. You see MAGA at war with itself over Epstein. And what that tells you is that this Trump coalition really is a Trump coalition. It's very hard to see what keeps them all together after Trump. Because when you think about the coalition he assembled in 2024 to win, there are a lot of elements there where the only thing that binds them together is the red hat. Like, that's it. I mean, that is it. And, it's funny. I saw a chart the other day that sort of showed the way the two parties have changed ideologically. The Democratic Party has really narrowed ideologically, and the Republican Party has really broadened. So that
Mm-hmm.
the Republican Party really has that broad ideological tent. And the only condition to join it, red hat. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You can believe
You've got,
whatever
like,
you want to believe.
guys who eat McDonald's 3 meals a day in the same
Yeah.
coalition with RFK Jr. You've got, Peter Thiel's handpicked, you know, puppet as the vice president, and the same party with, like, people like Steve Bannon who are, like, worried about technology and transhumanism. And frankly, I'm kind of with Steve Bannon against the Peter Thiels of the world. That's just me. It's weird that I am now in this, if I have to pick sides, I guess I'm with Bannon on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you said it well. Think about it this way. There's a ton of pro-vaccine Republicans, and the heart of the anti-vax movement is in the GOP. There are a ton of pro-Israel Republicans, and rising anti-Semitism is in the GOP. We could just do this all day long, where there are very strongly held opinions, and you're going to find the exact opposite within the same GOP. They're united for Trump. They're also united against the left, but that's going to be a harder thing to kind of hang together when the Trump unifying, polarizing figure is unifying on the right, polarizing
Yeah.
to everybody else. When he's gone, a lot of these differences. And then the other thing is that nobody in MAGA has been able to replicate Trump's appeal. His Trump has his core base, but he also has shown that he can get people outside that base. And
Mm-hmm.
nobody who's truly copied Trump, who's really been pure MAGA, unless they're in this deep, deep, deep red House district, has been able to match what he's done politically. And so I just don't know how well this all wears without Donald Trump being the standard bearer.
He's a celebrity. He's got charisma. He's Teflon. He's magic. But you're right. So, like, the Epstein was this another drawing surface from the birthday book of Epstein. The story, it's not going away. I mean, it's not taking him down. It's not Watergate, but it's not going away. It's sort of lingering. I think the same thing will be true, when it comes to foreign intervention. These people who are America first, basically isolationists, they're not going to go away. And David, the other schism I'm seeing on the right has to do with Israel and Palestine. And I think there is a growing segment of the right who are very anti-Israel. It seems like Tucker and Candace and Nick Fuentes, yes, he is a part of the right. And they are they have sort of a youthful energy about them mostly. And then you've got, like, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro, I guess, on the other side. There's a whole bunch of like, schisms that I think Trump is like the warlord who's keeping everyone in the tent. But, like, if he ever leaves, this is going to break out into a big fight.
So far in the GOP, one way to determine who is sort of leading the charge, who's the leading edge indicator, leading the wave of change in the GOP? Well, obviously, first, whatever Trump says goes. So let's put him in one corner. Whatever he says goes. But whichever faction has been voted most likely to rip you to shreds online is the faction that tends to win on the right. And so right now, the faction most likely to rip you to shreds online is this sort of rising anti-Semitic conspiratorial part of the right. And so until there is a popular backlash, until you begin to have a backlash, like the very hard left led the Democratic Party into its current wilderness right now, until the Republican Party, the very hard young right, actually starts to lead the GOP into an electoral wilderness, they're setting the terms. They are absolutely setting the terms of the debate. And so Israel, which absolutely has the rock solid support of, say, your median 72-year-old normie Republican living in Birmingham, outside of Birmingham, absolutely for Israel. Well, that person's grandson might be a groyper, right? And so that's kind of this generational change you're seeing, especially with young men on the right. They are extremely pugilistic, extremely conspiratorial. And then, when you see this from Candace and Tucker, it's very easy to sort of say, oh, well, they've gone off the reservation completely. They have taken leave of their senses. But have they taken leave of their audience? And it's not clear to me that they have. It is not clear at all. And I think that audience within the right is going to have to be reckoned with, sadly, awfully, tragically, for the foreseeable future.
I hear your friends over at the Dispatch talk about how the cranks used to be kind of divided, bipartisan, and now the cranks are all on the right. And I just heard Hassan, this streamer, Hassan
Piker, is that his name? Or
yeah. He was making a pretty good case that Nick Fuentes is appealing to progressive young people who hate, because Fuentes is now attacking Trump and he's pointing out the bullshit that Trump is pushing. So it's man bites dog. He's attacking Trump, but then so he sort of sucks you in with that, speaking truth to power, eloquent, brave, and then he gets you, and then he throws out the race. Then he pulls you in, and then he turns you into a racist. And I mean, it may not be that simple, but I think Hassan kind of has a point. Like, I think that this Fuentes guy is incredibly dangerous. And what happened is the Democrats kind of got rid of anybody who was edgy, politically incorrect, or had unorthodox kind of conspiratorial views. The Democrats kind of pushed them out and became very much a normie party, which sounds good. But if you're young and revolutionary and edgy, there's no other game in town but the right.
Yeah. I mean, now the question is, young, revolutionary, and edgy, how large of an electoral constituency is that? And a lot of people have made a lot of mistakes over the years, sort of tying themselves to young revolutionary movements, which are always smaller at the ballot box than they are sort of in popular imagination. So
that's what we thought. You're right, David. But I remember I made that same argument in 2024 as to why Trump might not win. Why Harris had a chance.
Oh, yeah. I absolutely, the thing that Trump pulled off was pulling in young, revolutionary, and edgy without losing normie, suburban Birmingham GOP. So he pulled off kind of a trick here, that he expanded the coalition with some people that would shock the consciences of a lot of normie Republican voters without losing the normie Republican voters. And he's created such and the right itself has created such a media ecosystem that sort of any allegation of racism on the right now redounds to the benefit of the right in a weird way, because on the one hand, the racists go, yeah, You're right, buddy. Here we are. And the people who are not racist are like, well, we've heard that forever.
Yeah.
We've heard that before. That's ridiculous. And so in a weird way, what the MAGA coalition did was it pulled in a lot of cranks without losing a lot of normies.
Mm-hmm.
And it absolutely won the election on the strength of expanding its coalition like that.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like I have people. I think about this all the time. I was thinking about it this morning, driving, taking my kids to school, driving back from school. I have like my parents, and then I'm just in my mind. I'm thinking of this like older conservative movement leader that I have
Yeah.
great reverence for. That's been very good to me. And there's so many crazy things that have happened, but just one of the recent ones is JD Vance said something to the effect of, I'm paraphrasing, but he said something like, there's no more honorable or better use of the American military than killing. He's talking about these, I guess, Venezuelan
The drug dealers, yeah. The alleged drug
right?
dealers, yeah.
And someone pointed that out, that, well, actually, like maybe we shouldn't be just summarily executing, foreigners who haven't been found guilty or something like that. And JD Vance tweeted something to the effect of like, I don't give a shit. Something like that, right? I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. No, that's what he said. Yeah, I don't think you're
my
paraphrasing.
fantasy, and I didn't exactly, I should have had better notes here, but my fantasy is like, I would love to take to these people that I know who are really devout, good, conservative, moral people, and I'd love to just show this to them and be like, and JD Vance, the vice president, just simply tweeted when this person raised an objection to, to just, murdering people without that he doesn't give a shit. Do you think that's Christian or responsible or moral or prudent? I would love to see what they would say. I assume it would just be rationalized, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, it would be rationalized. I mean, look, they're rough around the edges. We know that. I mean, how many
It's
times?
locker room talk, baby.
Yeah,
Locker room
it's
talk.
rough around the
Yeah.
edges. This is just, they're being real. They're being raw.
Yeah.
Do I really want them to do that? But at least they're not going to trans your kids. Like that's the
Right,
way
right.
this goes. And that flip, that last thing I said, at least they're not going to trans your kids. I've heard this
Big.
a million times. Yep. And what it is it's indicating that a lot of people who voted for Trump are absolutely locked in on the idea that the Democrats are the weird ones.
Yep.
Like if you want to, and so I do think, going back to what I said earlier, a lot of the hard left stuff really led the Democrats astray. And it took time for it to kind of filter through the broader public, because the broader public isn't on Twitter. It's not following everything on social media.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes time. And I think that's what MAGA is going to find out. The weirder it gets, the less they're going to have that normie mantle and being able to call the other side.
I've made as a political commentator are thinking that because something crazy happened and years went by and years go by and there's no ramifications, that I guess it didn't matter. No, it's just that I can't believe how long it takes for certain things I'm like, I thought we got to pass on that one because nothing ever came of it. But no, actually it mattered greatly. It just took 5 years for people to figure it out.
It's wild, the bifurcation, because if you're part of the very online political class, which you and I both are, there's no denying it. We're on it. We're in it. We can go through scandals at breakneck speed. It's amazing how something can be digested on Twitter and 48 hours later, it's like, why are we talking about that still? Even though it might be huge, it might be enormous. Think about the scoop that the Times had about this botched SEAL raid in North Korea. Sorry, in North Korea. That was huge. That's a huge thing that happened. I mean, according to the reporting, SEALs insorted onto North Korean soil without congressional consultation, kill innocent North Korean fishermen, and then are exfiltrated just in the nick of time before a possible world war causing geopolitical incident is kicked off. And we barely talk about it, Matt. I mean, so
it's
that's
like the 10th craziest thing that has happened, at least according to the tabloid nature of our news.
And so in this very online world that we inhabit, we cycle through, process, digest, debate, argue 10 scandals a week.
Yeah.
And then in the normal world, where people are focused on, okay, you've got to get the kids to piano recital, I got to get the other kids to soccer, and then I've still got some work to do. That world,
Yeah.
they're not following any of it at all. And so it just takes a lot of time for it to
Yeah.
permeate through the American public.
I just feel like Sydney Sweeney, Cracker Barrel, and Philly's Karen are going to get more clicks anyway. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And another thing, one thing that parts of the media are very good at is seizing on these very clickbaity. I mean, so I would guarantee you the median voter knows more about the Coldplay couple
yeah.
than the North Korean raid, or
Right.
knows
Right.
more about the Sydney Sweeney ad than Florida stopping vaccine mandates. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the way it is, and we can complain about it, which I often do, but it is what it is, and you have to adapt to it. If you're trying to win elections,
Yeah.
it's very difficult to adapt to, I think.
All right, so I want to go back to what you said a minute ago about the trans issue mattering so much to so many Republicans and being really just all that matters. And I thought about this a couple days ago, maybe a week ago. Malcolm Gladwell came out and said that he should have been, I'm paraphrasing again, David, but effectively he should have been against, allowing biologically born men or boys to play sports, female sports, sort of the trans sports argument, but he was afraid to say that before.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm misrepresenting him,
No,
but
he was very clear about that. Yeah.
something to that effect. No, my thinking. Here's what I tweeted. I tweeted, I think that what Gladwell's saying is true because it's kind of an admission against interest. And if it weren't for Donald Trump, I don't think things would have changed. Like I actually think that if that's the issue you care about the most, if you don't care about liberal democracy, if you don't care about a possible war with North Korea, if all you care about is the trans issue, I think Trump actually delivered a change. Am I wrong in sort of crediting him or blaming him, depending on your perspective, with that shift in the culture?
There was a push-pull. So I don't think there's any question that Trump sort of making that a centerpiece of the campaign. I mean, he's for you and she's for they, them, or
Yeah.
whatever. I think that was an absolutely devastating ad. I think for Harris, I think everyone who really took a look at this has looked at the numbers. They would say, look, of course it was the border and inflation more than the trans issue. But that ad was very effective. And so I do think that there was a part of this where Trump was just putting sort of the most radical element of the Democratic platform from 2020 in front of voters in 2024 in a very, very effective way. At the same time, I think that I said there's a push-pull. I also think that the pro-trans lobby, the activist class, was so over the top, was so vicious, was so intolerant that they were doing a really good job of alienating people, no matter if there was a Trump or not a Trump. And I think if you rewind the clock to 2018, 2019, 2020, that time period, it was remarkable the extent to which a very small class of activists sort of captured for a very brief time kind of one side of the political spectrum and wielded what seemed like almost like an absolute veto authority over whether somebody could even be considered part of polite society. And that was never going to be sustainable. It was always going to be alienating, especially when you looked at some of the issues that they would cast you into the outer darkness over, such as, hey, I don't think biological males should compete in women's sports. And they would treat you like you're some sort of unhinged bigot. Or I don't think that biologically intact males should be in women's private spaces where women can see male genitalia against their will. Like that very, very reasonable statement would cause an extraordinarily disproportionate response, a backlash against anybody who who wanted privacy in intimate spaces. And so that kind of fury and intolerance was never going to be able to last because it was
Mm.
so unreasonable and
Okay.
so
Let
over
me
the top.
let me reframe it a little bit then, though.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, it seems to me that so I don't like the Donald Trumps, the Chris Rufos of the world in general. I mean, they're like constantly looking for. They picked a fight with Uncle Herschel, the
I
logo
know.
of Cracker Barrel, right? I mean,
I
they're
know. I know.
they're constantly looking for fights. They're trying to divide. They're instead of allowing there to be comity and calmness, they're always picking fights. It's confrontational politics that they love, and I hate that. Actually, I think it's bad for America. But I think it's true that the left, to your point, had done a good job with small group of left wing activists had done a very good job of making it taboo to oppose trans athletes. And these right wing assholes, to their credit, I think they created a permission structure where if you're a regular guy, you now feel comfortable telling the truth. Malcolm Gladwell now feels comfortable saying what he always believed, but was afraid to say before. That's kind of my point.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that the permission structure was actually always there more than Gladwell leads on. I think that there were really two strains pushing back against the sort of the most extreme elements of the trans agenda. One was free speech advocates. Another one was sort of like the Rufo people, who we all know are not free speech advocates at all. And so you did have some people who were sort of in the, hey, wait a minute. You can't be closing off debate over this issue. You can't be canceling people, shutting people down. And that was a very reasonable, rational response to a very unreasonable, irrational wave of intolerance. And then at the same time, you had the Rufos of the world, et cetera. And here's the dynamic that I saw, Matt. A lot of people on the center right and center left, they just took this position like, it's not worth it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not worth it. I'm not going to talk about this. It's not really something that impacts my life at all. It's just not worth it. And so a whole bunch of reasonable people said it's not worth it and backed out, like the Gladwells, who he even went more than it's not worth it. He kind of argued for the other side. And then that did leave room for if there's one side is unbelievably unreasonable, a lot of people are going to listen to the other side almost no matter what it is. And so when that center left and the center right like abandoned this argument, sort of backed away from it, I think that you're right, Matt. I think that left the room for the Rufos in the world to sort of be seen as the only ones, the only voices. And then they encouraged that, like, we're it, when they were never it. They were never the only ones, but they absolutely encouraged that. So I do think if you don't stand up to intolerance in unreasonable or irrational arguments, that doesn't mean that the demand for a response goes away. People will then start to look at who is standing up,
Mm-hmm.
who is doing it. And they'll draw a lot of them people to themselves. So yeah, I do think there's absolutely an element of truth in what you're saying.
And the next, and maybe I'll get you out of here on this, although it's a conversation that's going to take us an hour and a half, but this is probably our last topic. I think a similar example is with the issue of crime. It's something that's real. It's emotional. We all are affected.
Yeah.
We all care about it, but it's also very easy to demagogue. And the latest example comes from Charlotte, where I guess there was a Ukrainian migrant young lady who was killed on public transportation by
Horrific.
a horrific, and it's like on video, or at least there's a
Oh,
picture
it's
by
horrible. Yeah.
this African American man who had a rap sheet. And I think it happened in August. For whatever reason, it's coming to light nationally now. And I think it's being used. Certainly, the White House has like a press release out saying that this is what happens when you have woke policies or woke politicians. It's going to be tried to use it against Roy Cooper, who's running for Senate in North Carolina as a Democrat. So it's an attempt to politicize it. It's a real issue. And I saw, he's getting yet another name check here, but I'll say Nick Fuentes. He had a video where he was saying, if she'd been more racist, this wouldn't have happened. So they are keying on this example. Some people on the right, it's a legitimate issue. This guy should not have been on the street. Obviously, he should not have murdered this, Ukrainian migrant. I think she was fleeing war to come to America. But some people on the right are using this to advance racism or simply to maybe elect Republicans. So what do you make of this whole thing?
Yeah. So this is a microcosm. So this is symbolic of so many different things. So one of them is, look, there's a strain on the right that is incredibly eager to publicize, in particular, the murders of white women by Black men. We should be under no illusions why part of the right have really, really picked this up. It's not because
there was a very attractive blonde young woman and a very large Black dude.
Yeah.
And they're in a pic. If this was just print, it's a different story, but there's image. Yeah. There's an image.
Yeah, it's a purely evil, unbelievably heinous crime captured. The still image of the moment of the attack is just unbelievably chilling, unbelievable. So it's just such an unbelievably evil act that has been absolutely exploited by part of the right. So that is true. At the same time, it's illustrated the confusion that exists on the left as to how to deal with these things, because you saw two very different responses. You had the response from North Carolina governor basically saying, this is horrible, this is tragic, we need more cops. Okay, that's a good response. Horrible, tragic, need more cops. What that's saying is we need to stop this from happening again, right? That's the way this is the common sense response to horrible crime. Declare it horrible and say, as a public official, I want to do something specific and concrete to stop it. Then you had the mayor of Charlotte come out and basically, with a lengthy statement, this was before it had really become big news, about how we're not going to incarcerate our way out of this, that we shouldn't demonize the unhoused and the mentally, and you're like, what on earth is going on here? It felt like a time capsule had gone from some sort of, progressive retreat in 2020 and brought it back to 2025. And it was just absurd. And so once again, what you had was this sort of really far left fringe of America embodied in this mayor of this town using language to talk about a terrible crime that was a bunch of like progressive, ideological language and not dealing with where people really are and what they're really worried about. And so it did highlight, I think, part of this problem you see on the left side of the spectrum. And what I wish a lot of my friends on the left who are just completely stumped at the enduring appeal of Trump would understand is that, look, when you had a rising extremism, whether it was defund the police or whether it was naming, shaming, and canceling anybody who had the audacity to say that biological males shouldn't compete in women's sports, when you did that, and then when you did things like, the Biden administration systematically lied to cover up that he was not fit anymore, what you tell the American people is that you're not responsible. What you tell the other people is that you're extreme. And if you're in charge, like you're the Biden administration, and you do and say things that people recoil from, or they can see are obviously a problem, they're going to turn to an alternative. It's a two-party system. And at some point, you have to perform, or the argument that the other side is worse is just not going to work anymore, because they're going to say, well, let's try because I'm tired of you. And I think that that's what a lot of Democrats had not absorbed by 2024. And it's why there was such deep-seated shock that almost every demographic in America became more red, in spite of the fact that who Trump was no longer a mystery to anybody.
You know, like as a very flawed Christian, I try to not allow my carnal nature to guide all of my actions, including in politics.
Right.
But I think for most of us, I mean, we are hardwired for, fear. I mean, fear is obviously a primal thing. And if I'm afraid of crime, I'm afraid these immigrants I'm watching Fox News all day long. So I'm certainly afraid immigrants are going to come in and kill me and my family and possibly rape us. If not, the trans people are going to get my daughter in the high school bathroom. If not, when I'm downtown in DC, God knows what's going to happen down there. I mean, if Trump is selling fear and that he is the strong man who can fix it, and the Democrats are talking about the unhoused, I think Trump wins every time. That's why I think Democrats really need to go in on, well, number one, they need to quit saying unhoused. Okay. But number two,
talk like a normal person. I mean, it's just, basic stuff. Yeah.
But the economy too, and I don't want to change the subject, but it does strike me that we can say the crime rate's fallen in DC, but the fear factor is going to outweigh that. But if the economy, if prices continue to rise, if groceries actually cost more, it's going to be harder, I think, for Trump to wiggle out of that one. But maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. One of the most interesting analyses of the 2024 election, and I can't remember where I first heard this, but I've been sharing it ever since I heard it, is there was a giant difference between rally Trump and television commercial Trump. So if you go to Rally Trump, that's where your hardcore MAGA and your Trumpists are. It's the deep dive into the MAGA extended universe. It's all of the grievances. It's the election. It's all of the grievances that you and I are familiar with by being too online. Okay. But if you just experience the election from the standpoint of somebody who's watching your local nightly news, or you're watching NFL football or something like that, and you're not following everything, Trump's message in his ads was very straight ahead. Prosperity, peace. Prices are too high. And then the they, them trans ad. And so it was all so mainstream. It was so mainstream that the Trump television ad blitz. I mean, it had the Trumpian flares of sort of gold letters and all of that, but it was so mainstream. And so he's reaching a category of people. He won overwhelmingly amongst people who don't pay attention to the news at all. And Harris won overwhelmingly with people who follow the news closely. And so the people who don't pay attention to the news at all, what impacts them? Conditions on the ground. How much does my gas cost? How much do my groceries cost? And he's banked so much on that, and yet is now engaging in policies that are designed to directly raise prices, do directly slow economic activity in some substantial ways. And now we're seeing a contraction in the job market. And I don't know, the sad reality, I think, Matt, that we've learned is that America will put up with a lot of weirdness, intolerance, and injustice if they feel like they're doing well personally, financially. And then they will become incredibly moral very quickly if they don't feel like they're doing well financially. That's when these scandals will start to stick.
Yep, I agree, and it's the economy, stupid. Well, what did I miss, David? It's always fun. I feel like we got into some deep stuff. What did I miss?
I don't know. I'm sitting here as we're taping this in Chicago, and we're wondering, are we going to have troops in the streets? And I do think what happened with the airstrike on the Venezuelan boat is more significant. It needs to stand out in the sort of wall of Trump scandals. because when you think through what he did there, it's extraordinarily dangerous. So what he basically did was use the fact that his administration exercised its discretion under law to designate a drug gang as a terrorist organization. He then used that designation of a terrorist organization as the legal hook to essentially declare war and engage in a military strike against criminal activity. And if you think through that for 5 seconds, that gets really scary and dangerous really fast, because what he's saying is that I can, by the designation of my own administration, unilaterally declare any criminal gang to be a terror organization, and then I can employ military force without due process against it. Wow. Wow,
And
Matt.
he did put out a social media message. What was it? A Truth Social, probably, that had that image of Chipocalypse now, I think he called it, where he said something about going to war with Chicago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Department, what was it? Something about the Chicago's going to find out about the Department of War.
Something like that.
Yeah. And so it's of a piece with, it's really interesting. Again, if you follow his Truth Social feed, this is like rally Trump. It is all the conspiracies. It is all the bloodthirstiness. It is all of the bravado. And he just pours that into his Truth Social feed, where MAGA lives, like the hardest core MAGA lives there. But a lot of that does not penetrate into the wider public. It just doesn't. And so, he also put out a video, or he retruthed, or whatever you want to call it, a video, just basically ripping vaccines to shreds as poisonous. And he's puts that on Truth Social. But then the day before, he had or even that day, he had said something where he wasn't particularly excited about Florida banning vaccine mandates. So he really plays it every possible way with this base.
Yep. Well, obviously, everyone should read you at the New York Times. Anything else, David, you want to plug?
I think we've just fixed it all, Matt.
I think
we've fixed it all. Yeah.
Bye-bye trans sports athletes. Bye-bye. Bye-bye war on Chicago. Everything's settled now.
The last
always a
two
pleasure.
reasonable people, Matt. That's just us.
David French, man, thanks for coming back on the pod.
Thanks for having me.